And tip number 1 is model techniques live.
Oh, okay. Tell me about it.
Right, now this is something that I think all teachers need to model. We know that modelling is part of good teaching, whatever subject. And it's the live bit that I think is really important. And I'll talk about modelling live in a maths context compared to modelling not live.
Okay.
But before that, I thought I'd mention other subjects and where modelling comes in. So I'm thinking back to lessons I've observed in other subjects. And I remember once I observed a drama lesson where the teacher kept telling the students what she wanted them to do, and at no point showed them what she wanted them to do. And then my feedback to her was that she should get up and model the sort of technique that she wanted them to show in this drama lesson. And she said she was a bit embarrassed to. That was to me a really key part of any teacher's job is modelling. And I really thought about that. I thought it's funny that she's embarrassed about doing the thing that she's an expert at. And then I realised that actually this applies in lots of other subjects, because I think that some teachers, and I'm not saying necessarily the word embarrassment is the right word, but some teachers are a bit anxious in the maths classroom and perhaps in lots of other subjects about modelling live. And then so since then I've sort of been really looking out for examples of good modelling, and I've seen it in PE lessons that I've observed. Where you could watch a PE lesson where they're teaching a technique, and I watched one where the PE teacher was teaching in cricket techniques, and he was showing the students kind of 5 skills that are used in cricket. And what was really good was he had some students get up to kind of do it while he directed them while the rest of the class watched. But the teacher also was modelling them as well. So he was telling the students, right, I want you to go over there and then you're going to do this thing. But then also the teacher got involved in that modelling, because the teacher's the expert. The teacher really threw the ball really far and really showed like how to do that really well. So I've seen it brilliantly in PE. And also I've seen live modelling really done well in art with a visualiser.
Yes.
But actually, this is what kind of, I'm going to say this is semi-live modelling. Because what I've seen is students in art who are being taught a technique, like a very specific technique to do with, I can't remember what it was, it might have involved some kind of etchings or rubbings or something, I don't know, but it was a really like specific thing that they were being taught. And what the teacher had done was she's used a visualiser in advance. She'd recorded her hands doing the whole technique. So she's sort of starting with a blank piece of paper. She'd done the whole thing and showed all the technique really, really clearly, and so you could just see her hands. She'd recorded that, and then she left it on the loop while the students did it.
Nice.
So smart. So that meant that the students could see exactly what they were meant to do, and they could see an actual person doing it. So not just hear an explanation, but see what to do. And then while they were working, they could just look up and reference the board and say, oh, what does she do next? Oh yeah, that's what I need to do. And because it was playing on a loop, they could then look again and again, and they could keep checking that they were doing it right.
Do you know the practicalities of what she'd used to record it, Jo? Was it just kind of screen capture
stuff? So in my
stuff?
school, yeah, we've got those visualisers, the IPEVO ones, which have got this, they're kind of on an arm, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Kind of, you can angle the visualiser. So she had then just angled the visualiser facing down onto her hands, done the work, and used the camera function on the computer to record it. So it's actually pretty straightforward stuff. And it was, I think they used it a lot during lockdown, the art teachers, to record techniques, and now it's part of their daily practice, which is fantastic. So I know a lot of maths teachers use visualisers in their day-to-day lessons, and I don't use a visualiser. I write directly onto an interactive whiteboard. But I did use a visualiser the other day when I was doing constructions.
Yeah.
And when I was doing transformation. So these are 2 topics which really lend themselves well to visualisers. And particularly with transformations, I wanted to show students the rotations with tracing paper thing. And no matter how good your animation is on a whiteboard or on some slides, that really is better shown with actual tracing paper, where you're actually, literally doing exactly what the students would do, and they can see your hands doing it. So I think this kind of live modelling under a visualiser is just such a helpful technique, and particularly in lessons where there's something practical to do, but also, we know that, for example, editing work in English under a visualiser, or in any subject with a written element, sort of showing that kind of live editing is really, really powerful. So I think visualisers are a really good tool for that, but I don't think all live modelling has to be done under a visualiser, because the other side of it is the writing on the board live. And so, for example, in maths, that would be solving a maths question while or going through the workings while the students watch, rather than clicking through a PowerPoint that's got the steps. And I think it's a huge difference in those two things. So my slides, and I'll use a slide where there's just a question at the top and then it's a blank slide. So I've thought in advance about what example I want to model. The slide will just have the question, and then I've got a blank slide where I will go through the workings and write it all up, and it should look exactly how it should look in their books. And this again was where a visualiser really helps, because you could actually have an exercise book. But I think it's so important that they see me do that rather than click, click, click through the next stage. I don't think that's as powerful. What do you think, Craig?
Yeah, a couple of things to say about that. So the first is, on that one, on the not clicking through, I see this a lot. You see this whenever, because there's so many good resources. Obviously, we're mathematicians, so we speak about maths. There's so many good pre-prepared maths resources, whether it's White Rose or whatever, where it's all fully worked out for you, all the examples, all the working out. And if you download something off TES, often the authors put so much time in and done all the working out for you because they want to communicate, how they're thinking and so on. There's almost too much on the slide. And I watch a lot of lessons these days where exactly the teacher clicks. And there's a couple of problems with that. One is if the child's thinking of a slightly different method, or even if they suggest a different method and it's not exactly the same one that's written on the slide, the teacher almost ends up saying, oh, you're absolutely right, but we're just going to do it slightly different here. And the kid's like, well, what's going on here? I like the mantra, I'm going to get this tattooed on myself: do the maths, don't reveal the maths. I think that's really nice. Revealing the maths is the problem. The other thing I want to say about that is, and this ties into the visualiser thing, I remember, I don't know if you were the same, Joe, when I first started teaching, I was PowerPoint obsessed in the sense that I wanted everything on my slide. So when you said those transformations, I used to spend hours getting the animation of the rotating tracing paper around and so on, thinking that was the proper way to do it because it looked nice on the thing. But you're absolutely right. Like, you want to replicate as much as you can what the kids are doing so that they can follow you doing it, and so on and so forth. And I was just thinking back to what you said about the art teacher. I really love this idea of recording what's done on the visualiser and playing it back on the loop. And I guess you can certainly do that before the lesson, which is really nice to do because it shows you've had a go at the example yourself and so on. But you could, if you were more technical than we are, well, certainly you are, Joe, no offence. But what you could definitely do is you could record it as you're doing it live in the class, right? And I'm sure then with a bit of button pressing, you could then get that up on the screen going on that loop so the kids could refer to it.
Yeah,
and
you're absolutely right. That's a good idea.
Even then get a bit fancier, upload it to VLE or Google Classroom or whatever, and then the kids could access that whenever they want to. I think that's really nice.
And for people that aren't confident enough with the tech to kind of record live and then immediately get it on the screen, there are ways you can use things alongside each other. Like you could have, I'm going to model it live under the visualiser, and then while you're doing it, I've got like a GIF, because you can just Google these things, I've got a GIF running on the screen where it's just, which might not necessarily be my hands doing it, but it's just, showing it. So while they're practicing, they can see it. But I do think, you're right about the kind of, we shouldn't just reveal step by step. Sometimes what I do, I normally write my own stuff, but sometimes I will download someone else's slides, and then I want to use their examples, and I just delete all the answer bits. So I've now got my blank slide. I've got the question at the top that I want to show, but I delete all the animated examples because I just don't think it's... and I know it's a really, really common practice to click through slides with the answers, but it's just not as powerful as the teacher doing it themselves. And I think there is sometimes a lot of anxiety. I remember when I first started teaching A-level, and I'd have worked out the questions in advance, and I had them on a bit of paper in the room.
Yeah, me too.
It was, and I used to I'd been modelling on the board and I knew how to do it, but I'd still occasionally look at the piece of paper, and I always thought that the students were judging me when I did that, and they were thinking, she doesn't know what to do next, she's having to check her notes. So I very quickly stopped doing that, because I thought, I don't want them to think that I need that. But for a while, I just lacked that confidence. I thought, well, what if I mess this up in front of them? But now I'm at the stage, and what it's like when you get more experience, you kind of get that confidence where it's like, if I mess it up in front of them, that's actually sometimes quite a good thing, isn't it? Because they can say, if they're paying attention, it's a really good way of checking they're paying attention. They can say, Miss, actually, you've made a mistake there. And then you can go back and fix it and say, yeah, everyone makes mistakes, and well done for spotting that. And hopefully you can all see why I went wrong there, and I'm going to fix it. So you just need to sort of get to the point where you're comfortable with the fact that you will occasionally make a mistake on the board. but the live modelling is a really powerful thing for students.
Yeah, it's really good. Just a couple more things on that. Yeah, I was exactly the same. When I first started, particularly further maths A-level, I didn't have a bloody clue what I was doing. And that's when, if there was pre-prepared slides, I was using those left, right and centre, because I had much more confidence, the fact that I could then show a line and then explain the line, but it was nowhere near as powerful as me actually kind of hand doing it. And the other thing, Jo, is, are you, as when you're doing your live modelling, are you doing some kind of explaining your thinking as well? I always think that's important. What kind of things are you doing there?
I guess so. Sometimes I'll stop between each line and ask for their ideas, and there's sort of pros and cons of that, isn't there? So sometimes I'll say, right, this one I'm going to model, and you're going to all watch, and you're going to try and follow my thinking, and then at each stage. So I won't necessarily be. I suppose if you think about something like your techniques of silent teaching and stuff, I might just be writing down each step. Whereas then there's because we can use all these things. You don't have to just show one technique. So another way you might do it is narrating each line. So now I'm going to subtract 2x from each side. That kind of thing. So there's that, and then there's the sort of technique of. Any ideas what I should do next? And then someone might suggest something, you say, right, so now I'm going to subtract 2x from each side. So, yeah, there's a kind of combination of stuff, and I don't think I stick exclusively to one style of modelling. And in one lesson, I might have 4 examples, and I might use those, like, all those different techniques in my 4 different examples. There might be one where I take a bit more input from the class, and one where I narrate each step, and one where I'm just writing it down. But I think, I think what you said about the different methods is really interesting, because actually on the few occasions where I have clicked through slides, sometimes I'll say, oh, they've done it differently to how I do it, and they're just confusing people then. Yeah. So, and then actually, it's nice to, or sometimes I'll say, right, any ideas on how we do this question? Someone might suggest something, and I'll think, oh, that's different to how I was going to do it. So I draw a line down the middle of the board, and I'll say, so this is one method, and I'll write that one up, and I'll say, anyone got another method? No, okay, so let me show you how I was thinking of doing it, and I'll put it side by side, and I'll say, look, here's 2 different ways, and I don't mind which way you do it, but so you can see 2 different perspectives. And all that stuff you lose if you just got a load of pre-filled text in a PowerPoint that you're clicking through.
I'll end on this with this tip. I was in a school the other day, I won't say where, and I was watching a very experienced teacher, and they were using some pre-prepared slides from a well-known resource provider. And you could tell they hadn't looked at them beforehand, because they were genuinely surprised when the methods were coming up on the board. They were like clicking through, like, oh, right, okay. And then they were trying to explain. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, interesting.
There we go.